We've got more drama in Rangerland. Igor Shesterkin has hit the injured reserve, and Zac Jones is mad about his playing time.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1216 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, new year and about the same amount of drama in Rangerland, although I guess technically some of these things sort of happened at the end of 2024, so maybe there's a clean slate after all here at the beginning of 2025. But the bottom line, what's happened in recent days is not good. We've got an injury to Igor Shesterkin that has landed him on injured reserve. It's an upper body injury. That will mean that he misses at least the next 3 games. And we've also got more drama. Zac Jones unhappy about being a healthy scratch for the Rangers over the last handful of games here. And we'll start with Igor Shesterkin. We'll work our way to Zac Jones a little bit later in the episode. But with Igor, again, he played in the most recent game against the Panthers. That was obviously a 4-3 loss for the Rangers, and no one seems to be 100% sure when it happened, although a lot of people are connecting the dots here, realizing that it's an upper body injury, and they're looking at the play that occurred when he was basically bumped into by a player on the Panthers. Basically what happened, the Panthers are driving to the net. Ryan Lindgren is there. Lindgren puts a big hit on his guy, and unfortunately, he knocks him directly into Igor Shesterkin. Did look like there was some contact between the Panther and Igor Shesterkin's head on that play. Obviously, Igor stayed in the game and closed it out, and the Rangers lost. But, just an unfortunate situation there. And I will say this about this play, because I see some people going on social media and blaming Ryan Lindgren for what happened. It's not ideal, obviously, that he checked him into the franchise goalie. That's not a great situation there. But at the same time, I'm not really sure exactly what Lindgren was supposed to do on this play, because if he doesn't make contact at all, then he's basically conceding the front of the Ranger net. He's trying to do something here. He's trying to play with some physicality. He's trying to guard the front of the Ranger net, which is something that we have not seen a whole lot of from this Ranger team this season. So from that perspective, it was actually kind of refreshing. Unfortunately, the result was not good. Contact with Igor Shesterkin, and again, we don't know 100% sure that that's where the injury occurred, but when you look at that game, it seems more than likely that that probably is when it happened. Again, not 100%, but that's, if we connect the dots, that's what we can come up with. As far as what this means for the Rangers going forward, being without Igor Shesterkin for really any amount of time here, it's devastating. And I realize I'm saying that while Igor Shesterkin is pretty much having what I would call the worst season of his career. If you go by the numbers, that is certainly the case. He has a record of 11, 15, and 1, a 310 goals against average, and a 906 save percentage. All those things would be the worst of his career. He's also allowed, this is a crazy stat to me, he has allowed 4 more goals in 10 of his 27 games this season. So flirting with like almost half, I mean, that's pretty crazy to think about. And lately just has not been able to stop the bleeding. He's one of many players on this Ranger team that just is not getting the job done right now. Igor has lost 11 of his last 14 games. Now, of course, that kind of coincides basically with what the team is doing as well, because as we know, the Rangers just continue to lose and lose and lose. But Igor is about to become the highest paid goalie in the history of the league. He signed that 8-year contract worth $11.5 million per season. And if you're going to be the highest paid goalie of all time, and if you're going to be the guy signing an 8-year contract, if you're going to be the guy that holds out to sign this new deal, just squeezes every dime possible out of the organization, then you can't go 3-11 over a 14-game stretch. I'm sorry, you just can't let that happen. And I realize there's games where he's had no chance. There's games where his teammates have hung him out to dry. They haven't played any defense. They've conceded odd man rushes left and right. They refuse to clear anybody out of the goal crease there. They just let guys kind of set up shop and basically do whatever they want. I realize all that, but in one way or another, you can't allow yourself, if you're Igor Shesterkin, and again, about to be the highest paid goalie of all time, to go 3-11 in a 14-game stretch. But the reason I say that this is devastating, regardless of how Igor has played recently, is because I think if the Rangers are going to possibly salvage this season, if they're going to in any way creep back into contention here, start to climb the ranks a little bit, the standings a little bit, and, start flirting with a playoff spot, at least getting within striking distance there, one of the best ways out of it for the Rangers is for Igor Shesterkin to play like the best goalie on the planet, which is obviously what he's being paid to be. And obviously, I mean, this isn't a recipe for long-term success. We've seen that over the years. But if your goalie can at least mask some of the things that you're doing wrong, at least you have a better chance of winning some of these games and stealing a couple wins. And then at least you get that winning feeling back in the locker room. Maybe everybody starts to feel a little bit better. Maybe other guys who are pressing right now start to come out of their slump a little bit. I think Igor, like I said, is one of the biggest tickets that the Rangers have to turning this thing around. And like I said, getting back into contention here. The fact that he's now on IR means that obviously he's not going to be able to do that. And if we look at this from the most literal possible perspective here, as far as what the IR means for Igor Shesterkin, it means that he has to miss the next 3 games at a minimum because he's on IR, and that's what, the territory that it comes with. The Rangers, for reference, they are home tonight against the Bruins. They are then at the Capitals on Saturday, and then at the Blackhawks on Sunday. So Igor would be eligible to come back the game after that, which would be at home against the Dallas Stars on Tuesday. And no indications as of now, at least not that I've seen, as far as whether this could be kind of a short-term thing or whether it goes on for a little while. It's possible. The Rangers don't even know for sure. Again, upper body injury. What exactly does that mean? I hope it's not a concussion for many reasons. First of all, I wouldn't wish a concussion on anybody. They're obviously very scary. But beyond that, obviously he was allowed to stay in this game and allowed to finish it. So if he did have a concussion, that does not look good from the Department of Player Safety or whatever that is. You guys know how it works now. When they see a player that they feel like may have suffered a concussion, they see any issues, any contact to the head or whatever, they do stop the game and they require that player to come off the ice and go in for testing and whatnot. And that obviously never happened with Igor Shesterkin. So I hope that it's not a concussion for all those reasons that I just mentioned. But the bottom line, the season's just a mess right now. If it's not one thing, it's something else. Injuries haven't really been that much of a problem this season. I mean, we saw Miller miss about 6 games. We saw Lindgren miss, a good chunk of the start of the season there. As far as other injuries, I mean, I think, Panarin missed a couple of games. We saw Kreider miss a couple of games. So injuries have popped up a little bit more often this season than they have in other years. But as far as all the Rangers' problems, all their issues, I can't really blame it on injuries. They haven't really, cumulatively as a team missed a whole lot of games due to injury. And that being the case, again, the injuries obviously don't help, but I'm certainly not going to chalk up the Rangers' problems to just injuries. That's maybe like the 30th thing that's wrong with this team this season at best. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to continue talking about Igor Shesterkin, talk about what the Rangers' game plan is without him. Can they get by without him? What are they going to do as far as the workload is concerned? Jonathan Quick is obviously, I would think, going to get the bulk of starts while Igor is gone, however long that might last. The Rangers have also called up Louis Domingue, and we're also going to talk about Ranger prospect Dylan Garand, who is not called up, though there is a reason for that. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second, and then we will also turn the page and talk about Zac Jones being angry, and I think rightfully so, about his lack of playing time recently. So we'll get to all that good stuff, like I said, in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. We all love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert just this past summer. Green Day and the Smashing Pumpkins at Citi Field. The energy and excitement were unforgettable. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, in our next episode. Might even drop later tonight, although I would say no later than Friday afternoon. We will be discussing whatever happens between the Rangers and the Bruins, who play each other tonight, Thursday night. Looking forward to that. Hopefully they can get a big win. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But to continue talking about Igor Shesterkin here and what the game plan is and just everything surrounding Igor this season and everything that's gone on and what to expect going forward. how the Rangers can survive without him. First of all, let me just say, I don't think that the Ranger players are phoning it in because they're for some reason upset with Igor Shesterkin. Every once in a while, you see somebody kind of float this idea. Look, there's been a lot of drama with this team going all the way back to the offseason with all the Trouba stuff, and then they're trying to get a long-term deal done with Igor Shesterkin. He doesn't want to sign an extension that would make him the highest paid goalie in the history of the NHL. And obviously there was a lot of drama once again with Igor trying to get every dollar possible from the Ranger organization. Maybe there's some speculation out there among fans that that didn't really sit right with Igor's teammates. It's something that I've mentioned on here as well. But I don't think that the Rangers' lack of defense, lack of team defense, lack of effort on team defense is tied into Igor Shesterkin at all. I think they're just a bad defensive team right now. And frankly, there's some certain players on this team that are lazy and are just not putting in the effort that you need to put in to be a Stanley Cup contender or really even a playoff team when it comes to defensive hockey. The defense has just been absolutely awful this season in just about every way conceivable. But I don't think it has anything to do with Igor because let's be honest here, it hasn't been really any different, any better or any worse when Jonathan Quick has been in the net for the Rangers. You look at, Quick's season right now, his numbers are better than Igor's. Quick so far this year has played in 12 games. I believe 9 are starts and 3 are in relief. Yeah, that is the case. So he's 5-4. He has a .269 goals against average, a .907 save percentage. But if you look at Quick's recent play, you look at his most recent 5 starts specifically. We're not going to look at the 2 games where he came in relief of Igor, somewhat recently. We look at Quick's last 5 starts. In those 5 games, Quick has given up a total of 23 goals. So again, it's not like Quick has done any better than Igor recently, and it's certainly not like this Ranger team has defended any better in front of Quick than they have in front of Igor Shesterkin. But the question still remains, how do you get by without Igor Shesterkin? Okay, so if you want to be an eternal optimist, which I try to be on here, I really do, but the Rangers have obviously made it difficult this season through a whole myriad of reasons that we've obviously been talking about in recent, weeks and now even months, basically, of Ranger hockey. But if you want to be an eternal optimist, it's possible that the Rangers now realize, okay, we do not have our franchise goalie. We do not have this guy that has saved our bacon so many times in the past, maybe not quite as much this season, but obviously we've seen it in other seasons, obviously in the postseason as well. We don't have him here. We have to tighten things up defensively. We can't just rely on Jonathan Quick and possibly Louis Domingue to stay on their heads and bail us out of every single little mistake, bail us out of every single odd man rush that we give up, bail us out of every single failure to back check. We need to pick things up defensively, and we have to do it now. It shouldn't take an injury to Igor Shesterkin for these guys to realize this, by the way. But maybe this is what they need to kind of jolt themselves out of it a little bit and just put in more effort defensively than they've obviously been showing in recent games. So we'll see if that's what happens. Again, these players now know that Igor is no longer available, at least for a handful of games here. So maybe that can snap them out of their coma at least a little bit. The other thing I want to mention, and I touched on it just a second ago there, Louis Domingue was called up. I saw a decent amount of Ranger fans wondering, why wasn't Dylan Garand called up and given this opportunity? There's some people that would like to see Garand get at least one start at the NHL just to kind of see what he can do and certainly to get his feet wet because you got to figure sooner or later this kid's going to be an NHL goalie. The short reason as far as why not Garand is he's injured. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. But as for Domingue, he basically is what he is at this point, 32 years old. He's somebody that gives you some organizational depth, somebody that is a veteran of NHL hockey. He's played for a whole bunch of different teams. You hope that maybe he's in a little bit of a mentor role with Dylan Garand. The two of them have split time with the Hartford Wolfpack this season. I do think you could certainly do worse than a Louis Domingue as far as your number 3 or number 4 goalie in the organization is concerned. But yeah, Domingue, 143 games with the Coyotes, Lightning, Devils, Canucks, Flames, Penguins, and Rangers. He is 60, 60, and 10 with a .905 save percentage and a .302 goals against average for his career. He did play in the one game last year for the Rangers. I'm sure some of you will remember that. Stopped 25 of 26 shots. Rangers beat the Wild 4-1 on that night. We even got some Lou chants in Madison Square Garden as that game was progressing there. So he did a nice job there. I think we're actually going to see Domingue somewhat soon because the Rangers do have 3 games in 4 days. We know for sure that Igor Shesterkin will not be eligible to return for any of those games. So if we map out these next 3 games here, you got to think it's going to be Jonathan Quick tonight against the Bruins. I don't see any reason why it would not be. So got to figure Quick will be out there. After that, you've got Saturday against the Caps and then Sunday against the Blackhawks. And what I think will happen here is we will see Quick out there again for the Capitals, the big divisional matchup. And I think the Capitals are in first in the Metro Division right now. If they're not, they're right there. So you'll get Quick for the division matchup. And then I would think maybe Domingue against I was going to say weaker opponent, but then again, the Blackhawks did beat the Rangers the last time they played each other. So I would think that's probably how they'll go. If Quick plays well tonight and he plays again on Saturday and plays well in that game, it might be tempting for Laviolette to just keep going with Jonathan Quick, just go right back to the hot hand. But, 3 games in 4 days is a lot to ask of any goalie, much less one that's going to, I believe, turn 39 a little bit later this month, if I'm not mistaken. So I do think we'll see Domingue. And obviously, again, same thing that I said about, Quick applies to Domingue here. Hopefully the Rangers realize they don't have their franchise goalie, the guy that's bailed them out so many times, in Igor Shesterkin, and they defend a little bit better in front of both these goalies. Now, as far as Garand goes, as I just mentioned, he is injured, and so that prevented the Rangers from potentially calling him up. He is listed as day-to-day with a lower body injury. For anybody that needs a refresher, he's 22 years old, former 4th-round pick by the Rangers in 2020. We've seen him get called up twice in the last 2 years here. Once last year, he actually backed up Louis Domingue in the game that Domingue won because Igor and Quick were not available in that game. And then this year, he was called up to back up Quick when Igor, him and his wife had just welcomed their second child. So Igor was away from the team for, a day or two there. And Garand was on the bench backing up Quick for the one game there. But we haven't actually seen him play yet. But it is worth pointing out here that Dylan Garand is having a phenomenal season with the Hartford Wolfpack, especially lately. This is technically his 4th season with the Pack, although he did only play 2 games in his first season there. So, really, I guess you could say 3rd season, unless you take it very literally, then it is his 4th season. But this is easily his best season in Hartford. He is 9-4-2 with a .225 goals against average and a .926 save percentage. He also has 2 shutouts. And I mentioned that he's done especially well recently. Here's a stat for you. So first of all, let me mention that in his most recent outing, Garand did give up 4 goals. But in the 5 games before that, the 5 games combined before that, Dylan Garand gave up a total of 4 goals. So he's absolutely been killing it. He's somebody that has also performed very well in the AHL playoffs. And I think that's something that, bodes well for him, the fact that he's at his best in crunch time. And he carried the Pack to some wins in the last 2 seasons in the playoffs. So that's obviously nice to see as well. As far as the Wolfpack, we might as well mention them real quick and just kind of continue to go down this rabbit hole here. We'll do a Wolfpack-centric episode sometime in the near future. Obviously, right now, there's just too much drama in Rangerland to even keep track of. We'll eventually work our way back to the Pack. But for anybody wondering, Pack now 14, 13, 2-1. That is good for 5th place in the Atlantic Division. And they are coming off a 7-0 win against Springfield in their most recent game. That game saw Ranger former 2nd-rounder Adam Sikora score 2 goals. Brian Othman had a goal in that game. I think it's only a matter of time before Brian Othman is on this Ranger team. And you might see them trade somebody to make room for him. I think Riley Smith would be a prime candidate for just that. But it's only a matter of time before Brian Othman is back up with the Rangers. You don't want to rush him along too much. He was injured recently. And, we've seen the Rangers rush their prospects, and it hasn't always worked out very well. So I think it probably makes sense for Othman to get a few more AHL games under his belt. But sooner or later, I would say probably sometime this month here in January, we will see Brian Othman get called up to the New York Rangers, and definitely looking forward to that. We saw him for 3 games last year, but I think you'll see a more extended run with Othman this season. You also in this game had Yaroslav Hebler get 3 assists, and then Talon Boykin got a 32-save shutout for the Hartford Wolfpack. So that's kind of where things stand as far as the goalies are concerned. One more thing that I'll mention here, and this is not something that I've seen anybody talk about, none of the beat writers or national NHL reporters or even any Ranger fans. I just wanted to throw out an idea here. The idea of possibly trading Jonathan Quick. Now, I'm not necessarily campaigning for this, but if things continue to spiral and continue to just go downhill and they're out of control, would Jonathan Quick want to be traded? Would he want to latch on with a contender for maybe one more run at a Stanley Cup? Does he want to stay with the Rangers beyond this season? Do the Rangers want him back? We don't know the answer to any of these questions, but I think if Quick is open to a move and the Rangers, again, they continue to spiral, it probably makes sense to deal him. Now, on one hand, you'd be losing, one of the seemingly only respected veteran leaders in this locker room right now. I mean, I'm just going by what I've seen on the ice recently, and it does feel like Quick does have that role for the Rangers. It's also worth pointing out that Quick has a 20-team no-trade list, but it all depends if, the Rangers feel like they can't get back into contention, then they maybe look to move Quick, and then maybe Quick wants to go somewhere else. Would he waive that no trade clause? I mean, who's to say for sure? But something that's at least food for thought and something to keep an eye on going forward here. And trading Quick would also open the door for Dylan Garand to join the NHL roster permanently, maybe give him some games toward the end of the season. Again, it's not a move that I really like, but again, if the Rangers continue to just spiral and fall out of it, then what's the point of holding on to Jonathan Quick, right? So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how things play out in the next couple of weeks and months here. Trade deadline is still more than 2 months away, so they have some time to decide on Quick as well as anybody else that, they might be looking to move, but we'll see how it goes. So in just a second, going to shift our attention to Zac Jones. He had some choice words, some eyebrow-raising words for sure. There was one quote that I had to make sure was actually real before I talked about it on here, because he pretty much went off on the Rangers, and we're going to discuss that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and close out today by talking a little bit about Zac Jones and some of the things that he had to say about his recent healthy scratchings, which unfortunately has been all too familiar territory for Zac Jones. But bottom line, Jones made it abundantly clear in a recent interview that he is not happy at all about this. I can't really say that I blame him. I'll repeat something that I said about Jones not too long ago, because there was an episode, maybe like 2 or 3 episodes ago, give or take, where I talked about Jones and his role on this team, and just the fact that I didn't think it was right that he was the odd man out for this team when you compare him to some of the other Ranger defensemen. And it's not because I look at Zac Jones and think that he's Brian Leetch 2.0. I do think there's some intrigue with his game. There's some maybe negatives too. I think certainly the lack of size works against him, and he does seem to have this knack for pinching when he shouldn't, which is obviously something that you'd like to see him get out of his game. That has led to some odd man rushes for sure. But when you take a look at the other Ranger defensemen on this team, I'll repeat something that I said 2 or 3 episodes ago. Once again here, for anybody that might have missed it, I think it worse this season. You look at the entire body of work from all these Ranger defensemen, and I think it worse. Zac Jones is the 3rd best defenseman on this team. You can't tell me that Zac Jones has played worse than Jacob Trouba when he was here. You can't tell me that Zac Jones has played worse than Keandre Miller. You can't tell me that Zac Jones has played worse than Ryan Lindgren. Keandre Miller, I didn't even talk about this in the last episode because, like I said, there's just so much going on right now, and it's like overload. I'm not kidding when I say I might have to start doing 2 episodes of Locked On Rangers per day. Keandre Miller in the last game was absolutely awful. He had a couple of plays that led directly to goals, even when the Rangers had their net pulled. Like the empty net goal was mostly on Keandre Miller there too. He was on the ice for 3 goals against, where his inability to make a play or take the body or do anything productive led directly to goals being allowed. And now, if that's Zac Jones, the Rangers would shoot him to Mars, basically. They would, send him off in a rocket ship to some faraway planet. But bottom line, look, Zac Jones, I'm not acting like he's been brilliant this season. It's more, honestly, of an indictment on the other Ranger defensemen than it is like me singing the praise of Zac Jones. I think Jones has had some good games, some not so good games. There's defensemen on this team that have had basically nothing but bad games the entire season. You might get an odd, solid performance every once in a while from Miller or Lindgren or even Trouba when he was here, but they've mostly been bad. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And then you look at the 2 new guys, and you've got Borgen and you've got Vakanainen. And I'll say what I said when they were brought over, and Jones, it was pretty obvious he was again going to be the odd man out. What has either of these 2 done to immediately slot in ahead of Zac Jones? These are 2 just random defensemen, just defensemen from around the NHL. Not spectacular in any way. I don't think they've done anything overly impressive since they've been on the Rangers. Borgen at least gives you some physicality and maybe a little bit of edge as well. But the idea that Jones immediately has to take a far, far back seat to these 2 new guys, I don't get that either. Zac Jones is your homegrown prospect. I realize he was drafted by a different regime, but he's still been here. He's still gone through your system. He's still been, as Peter Laviolette himself said, a good soldier. And yet it seems for one reason or another, it's easier to, make him the healthy scratch than it is Lindgren or Miller, Trua when he was here, Vakanainen now, Morgan now. It's always Zac Jones who's the odd man out. And we got to go ahead and get to these quotes that Zac Jones had here because, again, they are very eye-opening for sure. I will start with this one. I'm just generally a pretty easygoing, happy person, and no matter what is going on in my life, I'm going to try and come to the rink with a smile on my face, but it bleeping sucks. Now, in case there's any discrepancy about this, he did not say the word bleeping. You guys can fill in the blanks, I think, fairly easily there, but I cannot say that word. Anyway, this is the one I mentioned a while ago that I had to make sure it was real. I wanted to check a couple different, reporters and whatnot and make sure this quote was actually in articles. This is a real quote from Zac Jones. You guys ready for this? Buckle up. He says, "It's really bleeping tough. I mean, I'm not a 32-year-old guy collecting a paycheck. I'm a guy who wants to earn my paycheck. I need to play. I have things I need to improve in order to be a full-time player, and that's what I want to be. I want to be a guy who plays 82 games and be in the lineup every night." So there's a lot going on here. For starters, I like the fact that he says there's areas of his game that he has to improve. That's more than what you're going to get out of certain players on this Ranger team right now. So there's at least some accountability there, some self-awareness there that, Zac Jones knows that he's not a perfect player and there's things that he needs to do better. But the thing that I think got the attention of a lot of Ranger fans is the quote here where he says, "I'm not a 32-year-old guy collecting a paycheck." This, in some ways, feels like shots fired at the veterans on this team. Now, it's worth pointing out, because I know your mind is going to go, okay, so who's 32 on the Rangers, right? I don't think we want to take it that literally. But if you look at the age on these Rangers, I don't think anybody is exactly 32. I'm looking at the roster right now because I forgot to check that. But yeah, it does not look like anybody is exactly 32 years old. Let me see here. Okay, Sam Carrick. I don't think he's talking about him. Sam Carrick is 32 years old. Beyond that, that's it. It's just him. And I guess Louis Domingue, who just got here. Call me crazy. I don't think he's talking about Louis Domingue. But you look at some of the other ages, Panarin's 33, Mika's 31, Kreider's 33, Trocheck's 31. They're all kind of in that area. Riley Smith is 33. I don't know if this is fired specifically at the Ranger veterans. He might just be talking about kind of like an abstract idea here where, he's just looking at any 32-year-old in the league. This could refer to anybody that's just kind of out there coasting and, has already been paid and has already got their fat contract and really doesn't have to worry about things from a financial perspective. And Jones wants to go out there and he wants to earn everything. Jones, look, I mean, if you're making the NHL league minimum, you're making a very nice salary for yourself for sure. But, this is not exactly set for life money. Zac Jones this year is making $812,500. It's nice. It's awesome. He's still playing professional hockey for a living, making close to $1 million a year doing so. But, I mean, he hasn't really been able to cash in yet. And this could be shots at the Ranger veterans. And this kind of feels similar to what Capo Caco said, before he got traded about how, what was the quote for him? It felt like he said something like, "I haven't been the worst player," or something like that. And there was something else to it too. I don't have the exact quote in front of me right now, but it felt like it might have been shots fired at the Ranger veterans. It's at least possible that this is the same thing here. Zac Jones, taking aim at some of these Ranger veterans who, quite frankly, are not pulling their weight right now, to say the very least. Now, we also got a quote from Peter Laviolette when he was asked about Zac Jones' comments. "It's okay to be frustrated. I'm perfectly fine with that. Everybody wants to play. You get to this level, everyone wants in, they want to play, and I'm okay with that." This feels very similar, doesn't it? This feels like copy-paste from the exact order of events that happened when it came to Capo Caco. Obviously, Caco wasn't happy about being a healthy scratch. He said something that could be interpreted as a shot at the Ranger veterans, makes his displeasure with being a healthy scratch known, and then Peter Laviolette is asked about it, and gives, I think, a reasonable answer, but one that doesn't really give you a lot of closure on the matter either, because this is two young players on the Rangers who don't think it's right that they've been a healthy scratch night in and night out. And in the case of Caco, it was just the one game, but still, I mean, that was Caco getting scratched rather than guys that probably deserved it more than he did. So the only thing missing now is for Zac Jones to be traded, and that might very well happen. Other than that, this is played out the exact same way, literally the exact same way. You can almost interchange all the quotes and it wouldn't make any the same way that it played out with Capo Caco. And so Zac Jones could very well be on the move. We will see. For what it's worth, and a lot of these quotes come from an article by Colin Stevenson, who I hope to get back on the podcast at some point. He does a great job covering the Rangers. But for what it's worth, Colin pointed out just that to Capo Caco, or to Zac Jones, rather, that the last Ranger that complained about being a healthy scratch was Capo Caco, and that he was then traded just a day or two later. And Jones to that smiled and said, I'm not trying to pull a Caco here. So it's possible Jones just wants to keep battling, wants to keep fighting and work his way back into the Ranger lineup, but it has to be getting frustrated at this point because, as we talked about in a recent episode, when I was talking about Zac Jones and his whole situation with this team, and this is before any of these spicy quotes came out, it has to be getting very, very difficult for Zac Jones to continue to be the odd man out of this Ranger defenseman group, because you look at what happened last season, even seasons before that. The conclusion that I've come to is that the Rangers will play Zac Jones, but only if there are zero other viable options. Maybe if multiple defensemen are injured, maybe if this guy is suspended, maybe, I don't know. It just feels like if there's any other option in place, they're going to go with whoever that guy is over Zac Jones, whether they deserve it or not, whether they're playing good hockey or not, whether Zac Jones has thoroughly outplayed them or not. Zac Jones is always going to be the odd man out with the Rangers. So I've come to the conclusion this season that there is no long-term future for Zac Jones with the Rangers. After this season ends, he will be an RFA with arbitration rights, so it's possible they come to an extension. It's also possible Jones does eventually end up requesting a trade. As of now, as far as what's being reported, he has not done that, but things can change, and obviously the Rangers, they might trade him anyway, whether he requests one or not, and I think they should, because they've made it abundantly clear, have the Rangers, that Zac Jones basically has no future here, that everybody else that comes in here is going to be slotted ahead of Zac Jones in the pecking order. I was joking the other day, why don't we bring back Patrick Nemeth and Jared Tenorti, and why not Jack Johnson too? Let's throw him in there too. Let's slot all three of those guys ahead of Zac Jones as well. It just doesn't make any sense. Jones is very clearly outplayed a lot of guys that are playing in front of him. So it's unfortunate, and I say at a certain point, trade him for his own good. Let him get a fresh start. There's teams out there that would have use for Zac Jones. Maybe on the power play. I don't know that he's got to play like top pairing minutes anywhere else, like on some other contending team. But I could see him certainly having a bigger role with other teams than he does on the Rangers. I could see him very easily becoming, a lineup regular somewhere else, where at least he's never out of the starting lineup. But, only time is going to tell there, because like I said, I think it's only a matter of time before Zac Jones is the next Ranger. I would say that by the start of next season at the latest, that will indeed be the case. Jones will probably be playing somewhere else. So, yeah, the World Juniors are about to start here. We've got a quadruple header, so I'm about to pop that on. Definitely looking forward to watching the Ranger prospects, but figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter at LO_NY_Rangers. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.